How did my wife turn our fight into a public show, then go silent when my name was called in a civic line? Why did her smile disappear the moment the rules became real? Can a calm husband protect his child without ever raising his voice? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Aurelian March, and I used to think arguments ended when both people got tired. That night taught me some arguments end only when someone wins, and my wife, Selene, needed to win the way some people need air. It started in our kitchen, with nothing that should have mattered. I had asked why she was late again, because our daughter Mila had waited by the window and kept asking when Mom would be home. Selene said I was counting minutes like a prison guard. I said I was counting minutes like a father. She laughed and told me to stop acting like the victim. I did not raise my voice. I kept my tone even and told her I did not want to fight in front of Mila. Selene rolled her eyes and said I was using Mila to control her. She said I always tried to look calm so I could seem right. I watched how quickly she turned my restraint into something ugly. Mila was in her room drawing, but I could still hear her pencil moving, small and steady, like she was trying to ignore the air. Selene poured herself water and looked at her phone, then put it down hard like she wanted it to end the conversation for her. I asked what she wanted, because it felt like she wanted something larger than being late. Selene said she wanted freedom. She said she wanted to feel desired. She said I had become boring, and she said boredom was a kind of death. I told her we had a child and a home, and those things needed stability. Selene smiled and said stability was my favorite word because it made me feel powerful. I answered that stability made Mila feel safe. Selene shrugged as if safety was optional. She leaned against the counter and said we had been arguing about the same things for months. She said I always acted offended when she joked with men. She said if I was confident, it would not bother me. I told her jokes were not the issue, and disrespect was. Selene asked who decided what counted as disrespect. I said marriage did. She laughed again and said marriage was just a label people used to control each other. I took a breath and kept my hands open on the table, not clenched, because she loved to call me angry even when I was not. I told her I would not beg her to care. I told her I only wanted the truth about what she was doing. Selene's eyes narrowed, and I recognized the look of someone who wanted to hurt, not to solve. She said I was always suspicious. She said if I kept accusing her, she would prove to me what real disrespect looked like. I asked what that meant. Selene took her phone and lifted it, as if it was a weapon. She said she was going out with friends tonight, and she said she would show me how harmless it was. She said I could come if I wanted, but I would only embarrass myself. I did not chase her words. I asked who would watch Mila. Selene said I would, like I always did, and she said that was my job anyway. That sentence landed quietly, like a door closing. Selene left the kitchen, and I heard her moving in the bedroom, opening drawers, closing them, not softly. Mila walked into the hallway and asked if Mom was mad. I knelt and told her Mom was tired and that Dad would make dinner. Mila nodded and hugged my neck, holding on longer than usual. Selene came out wearing a dress she did not wear for me anymore. She sprayed perfume, checked her reflection, and said she needed a break from my attitude. I asked her to be home at a reasonable time. Selene said she was not a teenager, and she said she did not need my permission. Then she stepped close and spoke in a softer voice, as if softness would make the threat look like love. She said if I wanted to keep arguing, she would win the argument in front of everyone. I did not reply. I watched her walk to the door, her heels clicking like a countdown. The stairwell door closed behind her, and the apartment felt too large for just me and Mila. I made Mila pasta and sat with her at the small table. She asked why Mom went out so much. I told her adults sometimes make selfish choices, but it was not the child's fault. Mila asked if Mom still loved us. I said Mom loved her, and that was true, even if Selene's love had become careless. After Mila brushed her teeth, I read her a story and waited until her eyelids got heavy. When she finally fell asleep, I stayed a little longer beside her bed, listening to her breathing steady out. I told myself I could handle anything as long as Mila stayed safe. Then I went back to the kitchen and stared at Selene's empty chair. The quiet in that chair felt like a message. I opened my phone and checked the time. No message, no update. I told myself not to text her too much because she would use it to call me controlling. I decided to do what calm people do when they have nothing else. I cleaned. I wiped the counter. I washed a cup that was already clean. I checked the front door lock once, then forced myself to stop. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a group chat notification from Selene's friends. I had been added months ago when Selene wanted to show we were a modern couple. The chat was usually jokes and photos. Tonight it was active in a way it had not been in weeks. I did not open it immediately. I waited because I knew once I opened it, something would change in me. A few minutes later, Celine sent a text that said she would be late, and she added a laughing symbol like it was cute. I asked if she was safe. She replied that I was exhausting. I put the phone down and stared at it like it could teach me what I was missing. Then the screen lit up again, not with her name, but with a preview of a message from an unknown contact. It was on Selene's phone, not mine, because her phone was synced to the tablet we used for Mila's school apps. The tablet sat on the counter, and it flashed for 1 second, bright enough for me to read a few words before it vanished. The contact name was only an emoji, and the message preview said, "You did it perfectly. He looked so small." My stomach tightened, and before I could touch the screen, the preview disappeared like someone had deleted it fast from another device. I stood still, feeling the cold rush of understanding. This was not random fun. This was planned. This was performance. I did not smash anything. I did not call her 20 times. I did not drive out in a rage. I picked up the tablet and set it face down like it was something hot. Then I walked to the hallway and listened. The stairwell was quiet. Mila's room was quiet. The apartment sounded normal, but my marriage no longer did. I went back to the kitchen and sat down, hands flat on the table, breathing slow. I knew Celine wanted a reaction so she could use it. I also knew that if she was planning winning with a crowd, the crowd would eventually see something real. The question was whether Mila would be harmed before that happened. I stared at the dark window and told myself one rule. I would not play Selene's game. I would stay calm, I would watch carefully, and I would stop guessing. The next morning, Selene came home like nothing had happened. The front door opened quietly, as if she did not want to wake Mila, and for a second I almost respected that. Then I saw her face. She looked satisfied, not tired. She carried her purse close to her body, and her phone was already in her hand. She glanced at me and said I was still awake because I was always waiting to accuse her. I answered that I was awake because Mila had school and I needed to be ready. Selene smirked and said I loved acting responsible because it made her look bad. I did not argue. I asked if she had fun. Selene said she had proved a point. I asked what point. She leaned toward the counter, took a sip of water, and said the point was that I could not control what she did. I asked where she had been. Selene said out. I asked with who. Selene said friends. The answers were vague on purpose, like fog. Mila walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, and Selene's tone changed instantly into a warm voice. She told Mila she missed her and kissed her forehead, then asked what Mila wanted for breakfast. Mila smiled, then glanced at me, checking if I was angry. I kept my face calm and started making toast. Selena watched me for a moment, then whispered that I looked scary when I pretended to be calm. I did not respond to the whisper. I spoke only to Mila and asked about her school project. Mila relaxed a little and started talking. Selene looked bored by the normal conversation, like she needed drama the way some people need caffeine. When Mila went to wash her hands, Selene leaned closer again and said, I should not embarrass her again. I asked what she meant. Selene said if I showed up where she was, she would make sure everyone saw what a jealous husband I was. She said she would win, again. I asked why winning mattered more than peace. Selene shrugged and said peace was for people who had nothing to fight for. She said I fought for control. I said I fought for stability. She laughed and said stability was my excuse. After I dropped Mila at school, I drove to work with a tight feeling behind my ribs. I told myself to focus on tasks and deadlines. My job was compliance coordination at a logistics firm, and my morning was supposed to be reports and checklists. But the moment I stepped into the open plan office, I felt a change in the air. People looked up, then looked away too fast. A couple of coworkers stopped talking mid-sentence when I walked by. It was the kind of silence that said my name had been used earlier. I sat at my desk and opened my email, trying to look normal. Then I saw the meeting invite. HR had scheduled me for a quick word at 10:15. No details, no agenda. Just a clean title and a short time slot, as if my life could be handled in 15 minutes. Daniel from the next row rolled his chair toward me and asked if I wanted coffee. His voice was neutral, which made it kind. I nodded. He handed me a cup and said quietly that people were saying strange things. He said he did not know what was true, but he wanted me to be careful. I asked what kind of things. Daniel hesitated and said Selene had posted something last night, and people were sharing it. I opened my phone and checked the group chat from Selene's friends. There were photos and short clips. Selene was smiling wide under colored lights. A man stood close beside her, and in one clip she was dancing with him, turning toward the camera with a grin that looked like victory. The caption someone wrote said, "She just ended him without saying a word." Another comment said, "Insecure husbands deserve it." My throat went dry. I watched the clip once, then stopped. I did not watch it again. If I watched it again, anger would grow, and anger would show on my face. I needed my face calm today. At 10:15, I walked into the HR room. Paula Wren sat across from me with a polite professional expression. She asked if everything was okay at home. I said I was handling personal matters and that I did not want them to affect work. Paula nodded and said she understood, but she had received a concern about harassment. She said someone claimed I had been messaging my wife repeatedly and showing up where she was. I felt heat rise behind my ears, but I kept my tone even. I said I had not harassed anyone, and I had not caused a scene at work. Paula said she was not accusing, only documenting. She asked me to keep boundaries and not bring conflict into the workplace. I told her I agreed. Paula added that social media posts sometimes spill into office culture, and that it was better to keep things private. The word private sounded like a joke. Celine had made private things public on purpose. I thanked Paula and left the room. Back at my desk, my phone buzzed. Celine had texted, "See, everyone agrees you're the problem." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote a reply and deleted it. I wrote another and deleted it too. Finally, I sent one sentence. I said I would not argue by text, and I would only talk at home when Mila was asleep. Celine replied that I was afraid to face her in public. She said I did not like an audience because the audience could see the truth. I did not reply. Instead, I opened my calendar and created a recurring entry called Meeting, Personal. I set it to repeat weekly because routine was the only weapon I trusted. I did not write anything about courts or lawyers. I did not write anything dramatic. I just gave myself a structure. Then I opened a blank spreadsheet and typed dates at the top. I did not title it anything suspicious. I left it unnamed for now. I only started writing down simple facts. Mila's questions, Celine's late nights, public posts, HR meeting time. I kept it clean and unemotional. Facts do not need adjectives to be sharp. After work, I went to the supermarket. I bought Mila's cereal, fruit, and soup because the weather was turning cold. I stood in the checkout line and tried to breathe normally. The cashier scanned items slowly. Then my phone rang. Celine. I answered quietly. Celine's voice was loud and bright, as if she wanted the people around me to hear. She asked where I was. I said the supermarket. Celine laughed and said I was probably following her again. I said I was buying food for our child. Celine raised her voice and said I was a controlling man who used Mila to trap her. A woman behind me stared. The cashier paused for a second. I did not argue. I said I would not have this conversation in public. Celine said I was scared. I ended the call calmly, paid, and took the bags. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a moment without turning the engine on. My hands rested on the steering wheel, and I forced myself to unclench my jaw. My phone buzzed with a group chat ping again. Someone posted a new clip from last night. In it, Celine was dancing with the same man, and she turned to the camera and pointed like she was pointing at me, even though I was not there. The caption said, "She did it just to win the argument." The comment under it said, "He deserved it." I stared at the screen and felt something steady settle inside me. Celine was not hiding, she was performing, and if she was performing, she would keep raising the stakes until the performance had consequences. I started the engine and drove home, not to confront her, but to protect Mila's routine. Celine came home later, acting cheerful. She hugged Mila, asked about school, and pretended to be a normal mother. Mila smiled, but her eyes flicked to me again, searching for danger. I served dinner and kept my voice soft. After Mila went to bed, Celine leaned on the counter and asked why I was being quiet. I said I was tired. Celine said I was sulking because I lost. I asked what she thought she had won. Celine smiled and said she had won proof that she could do anything and I would just sit there. I looked at her and said I was not sitting. I was thinking. Celine laughed and told me thinking was my way of pretending I had power. Then her phone lit up, and she turned it face down fast. I saw the contact name for a split second. It was still just an emoji. The screen went dark. Celine looked at me and said if I followed her again, she would make sure everyone saw the real me. I nodded, not agreeing, only acknowledging. I walked to the living room, opened my laptop, and created 2 clean folders on the desktop, Archive A and Archive B. I did not put anything in them yet. I just made space for the truth. I did not tell Celine I had seen the clip again. I did not tell her I had created the folders. If I announced what I was doing, she would turn it into a game and find a way to win against it too. The next day moved like a normal day on the outside. Mila went to school, I went to work. Celine texted in the afternoon that she was going out again, and she wrote it like a challenge, not a plan. She said she was meeting friends for drinks, and she said I should not start another argument. I replied with one sentence and asked what time she would be home, because Mila had been asking for her. Selena replied that I was obsessed with schedules and that she would come home when she wanted. I did not push, I did not call. I cooked dinner for Mila and listened to her talk about her drawings. When Selene did not come home by bedtime, Mila asked if Mom was mad again. I told her Mom was making choices that adults sometimes make, and I told Mila she was safe. After Mila fell asleep, I sat in the living room and stared at my phone without touching it. I felt the pull to chase Selene's location, to demand answers, to plead for normal, but Selene wanted me to chase. She wanted me to look unstable. She wanted a story where she was brave and I was pathetic. I could not control what she did, but I could control what I did. So I made a decision that felt bitter but clear. I would see the truth in a public place where witnesses existed, and I would not give anyone a reason to say I had threatened her. Around 10, the group chat pinged again. Someone wrote that everyone was going to the same club near the river, the one with a rooftop bar. A photo followed, showing Selene's face in a mirror, lips glossy, eyes bright, like she was going to a celebration. I did not reply in the chat. I put on a plain jacket and walked to my car. I did not drink. I did not bring friends. I did not bring anger. I drove to the district and parked in a public parking garage 2 blocks away. I chose a place with cameras and bright lights because I refused to be alone in shadows. I sat for a moment with the engine off and reminded myself of one rule. No scenes, no touching, no yelling, no blocking doors. I walked from the garage toward the club with slow steps. The music grew louder with each block. People laughed in groups and moved like they had no consequences waiting at home. At the club entrance, I saw a line and a bouncer, and I stayed to the side, not pushing through. I did not need to be inside to see what Selena wanted me to see. The smoking patio was visible from the street corner, and the rooftop elevator doors were visible through the front glass. Selena arrived with her friends like a small parade. She wore a dress that looked like it had been chosen for attention, not comfort. She walked with a confident bounce and held her phone high, filming herself as she moved. Her friends laughed loudly and pointed at strangers like the night was theirs. A man walked beside Selene with a relaxed smile, and I recognized him from the clip. Carter Vane. He looked like the kind of man who enjoyed being seen. He wore a fitted shirt and a watch that caught the streetlights. He leaned towards Selene as they walked, and Selene laughed with her head tilted back, like she wanted people to notice. They did not enter the club right away. They stopped near the patio rail, and Selene looked around. When her eyes found me, her smile sharpened into something proud. She did not look surprised. She looked like she had been waiting. She turned her body slightly so Carter could see where she was looking. Then she said something to him that made him glance my way. Carter's eyes met mine for a second. Then he smiled as if I was a joke he did not need to understand. Selene stepped closer to the patio entrance and spoke with a voice loud enough for her friends to hear. She asked why I was there. I answered calmly that I was not there to fight, and I was not there to control her. I said I only wanted to understand what she was doing. Selene laughed and said I was proving her point by showing up. One of her friends lifted a phone and aimed it at me. Another friend nudged her and whispered, and they both smiled. I kept my hands visible at my sides and did not step into Selene's space. Selene asked if I was going to lecture her again like a boring man. I said I would not lecture her. Selena turned to her friends and said they should go inside because the show was starting. The word show made my stomach twist because she was not hiding what this was. She wanted an audience. Carter took Selene's hand lightly, not hidden, not shy. Selene let him. Then she looked at me again and said she would settle our argument right now. She said she would win it in a way I could not deny. I did not respond with a threat. I did not respond with a plea. I said quietly that this was not a competition. Selena replied that it was, because she was tired of me acting like I was right just because I stayed calm. She said calm was my mask. They went inside. I stayed near the edge of the entrance, not pushing in, but close enough to see through the doorway when it opened. The bass beat pulsed like a heartbeat. People moved under colored lights. I saw Selene and Carter near the dance floor, surrounded by her friends. Selene lifted her phone and filmed herself, then filmed Carter, then filmed the crowd cheering. She looked straight toward the entrance again, searching for me, and when she saw me, she smiled wide. She said something to her friends, and they raised their phones too. Then Selene stepped onto the dance floor with Carter, and she moved in a way that was not casual. It was deliberate. She kept glancing toward me, like my reaction was the real music. Carter placed his hands at a respectful distance, but the message was still clear. Selene leaned in close to him, laughing, and she pointed toward the entrance with a quick gesture, like she was pointing at the loser. Her friends screamed and clapped, and I heard someone shout that Selene was savage. I stood still. I did not walk onto the dance floor. I did not try to pull her away. I did not yell her name. I watched like a witness, because that was what I had become. Selene danced for longer than a normal moment. It was not a quick joke. It was a performance with chapters. She would spin away, then come back close again. She would laugh into Carter's ear, then pull back and glance toward me to see if the blow had landed. Carter played his role, smiling, looking relaxed, like he was enjoying the power without having to carry the consequences. Celine's friends formed a half circle around them, phones up, filming. A few strangers joined the energy because clubs reward drama. I felt heat behind my eyes, but I did not let it turn into tears or rage. I kept my face calm and neutral because Selene wanted an image of me breaking. If I broke, she would replay it forever. She would show Mila's future teachers, Mila's future friends, anyone she wanted. So I stayed still. I breathed slowly. I reminded myself that my job was not to control Selene. My job was to protect Mila. After a while, Selene left the dance floor and walked toward the bar area, still laughing. She raised her phone and filmed herself again, and in the clip I could see her mouth forming words that looked like an insult. Then she walked toward the smoking patio with her group. The door opened and the sound spilled out onto the street. Selene stepped onto the patio and pretended to be surprised to see me still there. She asked if I enjoyed the show. I said nothing for a moment, because anything I said would be used. Then I told her, calmly, that humiliating me did not solve our marriage. Selene replied that our marriage was not her problem anymore, because she was tired of losing to my calm. She said my calm made her feel small, and she hated feeling small. I told her I had never tried to make her small. Selene said that was the point. She said I acted innocent while she felt trapped. She said she needed to win to feel alive. Her friend filmed again, and I saw the small red dot on the phone screen that meant recording. I did not cover my face. I did not lunge for the phone. I simply stepped back half a step, creating space, and kept my voice low. I told Selene I would not argue here. Selene asked if I was scared of the crowd. I said I respected Mila too much to act like a fool in public. Selene's face changed at Mila's name. For a second, she looked annoyed, as if I had dragged a boring subject into her fun. Then she recovered and said Mila was fine and would adjust. That sentence hit me like a cold hand. Selene's friend laughed and said I should stop acting like a saint. Carter came onto the patio and offered Selene his arm, and Selene took it. She leaned into him in front of me with a smile that said, "I can do this, and you cannot stop it." I did not try to stop it. I looked at Selene and asked one simple question. I asked if she wanted to come home tonight or not. Selene laughed and said she would not come home because I ruined the mood by being there. She said she might go to the rooftop bar because it was more fun without a judge watching. The word judge was meant to sting. I let it pass. They moved back inside, and I stayed outside. I could have left then, but I needed one more truth. I needed to see how far Selene would go just to win. Through the glass, I saw the group drift toward the elevator that led to the rooftop. The crowd pressed in, and Selene's friends chanted her name like she was a hero. A toast began somewhere behind them, and people lifted drinks toward the ceiling. The vibe was not about friendship anymore. It was about Selene's power. Selene turned once more and looked through the glass toward where I stood. She lifted her phone and aimed it at me, filming. Then she smiled, lifted her free hand, and waved like a queen. A bright camera flash popped from someone nearby, and for a split second the world went white. My heart thudded hard, but my body did not move. I kept my face blank, because I refused to be the clip that made them laugh. The elevator bell chimed, the doors opened. Selene and Carter stepped in first, and her friends rushed in behind them. The doors began to close, and Selena's eyes stayed on me until the last second. Then the doors shut, and the bell chimed again as the elevator rose. The street sound returned, normal and cruel. I stood there feeling like I had watched my marriage turn into a sport. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Unknown number, no name, just a ring that felt too calm to be random. I did not answer. The call stopped. A second later, it rang again. Unknown number again. I looked up at the rooftop lights glowing above the building, then looked down at my phone screen in my hand. The unknown caller stopped ringing, and a notification from the group chat appeared at the same time, as if the night was already being edited into a story. I went home alone after the club and did not wake Mila. I washed my hands like I was washing off the night, then sat at the kitchen table until the sky started turning gray. Selene did not come home. She did not send a real message. At one point, a short text arrived that only said she was safe and I should not wait up. The words felt like a command, not care. I did not answer. I did not want to give her another screenshot to show her friends. I closed my eyes for a few minutes, then stood up and started the morning routine because Mila's life could not pause for my pain. Mila came into the kitchen rubbing her eyes and asked where Mom was. I kept my voice soft and said Mom was out and would be back later. Mila asked if Mom was mad at Dad again. I told her adults sometimes argue, but it was not Mila's fault. Mila looked at my face like she was searching for danger. I forced my expression to stay calm, not empty, because children can feel emptiness too. I made her breakfast, brushed her hair, and walked her to school. At the crosswalk, she squeezed my hand hard, then let go when she saw her teacher. I watched her run inside and felt the urge to break down right there on the sidewalk. I did not. I reminded myself that one parent had to stay steady. Celine finally came home mid-morning while I was folding laundry. She walked in quietly, then spoke as if nothing serious had happened. She asked why I looked tired, like she had not been the reason. I kept my tone even and asked where she slept. Celine answered that it did not matter and that she had needed space. I asked if she understood what Mila asked me that morning. Celine shrugged and said children asked questions all the time. She said Mila would be fine if I stopped acting like everything was a tragedy. I told Celine that Mila's questions were not jokes. Celine said I was trying to make her feel guilty, and she said guilt was another way to control. I did not argue. I only said that Mila needed her mother to come home like a mother, not like a guest. Celine laughed softly and said I was dramatic. Later that day, my mother Inez called. Her voice was careful, like she was walking on glass. She asked how I was sleeping. I told her I was fine. Inez did not accept the word fine. She said she had seen these situations before, and she said people who loved drama always tried to paint the calm person as the monster. She warned me that silence can be twisted into cold. She asked if Mila was okay. I told her Mila was asking questions. Inez said children ask questions when adults hide truth in the walls. She told me to keep routines and to keep my voice low, even if I felt like screaming. I thanked her and ended the call before Celine could hear too much. Celine did not like my mother's calm advice. She called it manipulation. The next afternoon, I waited in the school pickup line with other parents. Cars idled, people scrolled on phones. A group of mothers chatted near the gate. I stood beside my car and watched the door like it was a lifeline. When Mila came out, she walked slower than usual. She climbed into the back seat and did not start talking right away. That scared me more than crying would have. I asked her if school was okay. Mila nodded. Then she whispered a question that felt too heavy for a child's mouth. She asked if Mom danced with another man because Dad was bad. My throat tightened. I kept my eyes on the road as I pulled out, because if I looked in the mirror, she would see my face crack. I told her no. I told her adults sometimes make selfish choices, and it is not because the child is not enough, and it is not because the father is bad. Mila asked if Mom loved us. I told her Mom loved her, and that love should look like care, not like games. Mila was quiet again, and then she asked if Mom was going to leave. I said I would not let Mila be left alone in fear, and I promised her we would keep our home safe. I did not say more, because I could not explain Celine's mind without poisoning Mila's heart. When we got home, Celine was in the kitchen taking a selfie in the window light. She smiled at her own screen and did not notice Mila's face right away. Mila said hi softly. Celine turned and acted warm, hugged her, and asked about school in a bright voice. Mila hugged back, but I felt how stiff her shoulders were. Celine glanced at me as if my presence annoyed her performance. I told Celine Mila had asked a hard question in the car. Celine rolled her eyes and asked what question. I said Mila asked if Celine danced because Dad was bad. Celine scoffed and said Mila was being dramatic because I was dramatic. She said I probably put ideas in Mila's head. I felt anger rise, but I kept it behind my teeth. I told Celine Mila was not being dramatic. Mila was confused and scared. Celine said confusion was part of growing up. She said Mila would survive. Then Celine looked at her phone, and a message preview popped up for a split second. I saw only a few words before Celine swiped it away fast. I did not see a name, only an emoji again. Celine looked at me and said I should stop staring. I said I was not staring, and I asked why she kept hiding her screen. Celine answered that I was paranoid. That evening, Celine insisted we go to dinner with her parents. She said we needed to act normal. I understood what she really meant. She wanted witnesses again. She wanted a room where my calm could be framed as guilt. I agreed anyway, because refusing would become a new accusation. Mila sat in the back seat quiet, holding her small toy like it was armor. Celine hummed to music and checked her phone, typing, then deleting, then typing again. I watched the rhythm of her thumbs and realized it was the rhythm of someone living two lives. The restaurant was crowded and loud, with long tables and bright lights. Selene's mother Daphne greeted Selene like she was returning from war. She hugged her, then looked at me as if I was a stain. Selene's father Victor nodded politely and asked about work, but his eyes moved away fast. Selene's brother Roman slapped my shoulder and made a joke about how I should relax more. I sat down and kept my hands folded on the table. Mila sat close to me and stared at her menu without reading it. Selene started talking right away, telling a story about last night without saying my name directly. She spoke like a narrator, describing a jealous husband who could not handle a confident wife. Daphne laughed and said some men were too fragile. Selene smiled and said she only danced to end an argument. She said it was harmless. Roman laughed and said I should stop taking life so seriously. Victor cleared his throat and said maybe everyone should eat first. Daphne ignored him. Selene looked at me and asked in a sweet voice if I still wanted to control her. I answered calmly that I did not want control. I wanted respect and stability for Mila. Daphne leaned forward and said respect was earned, and she said Selene deserved freedom. I said freedom did not require humiliation. Selene laughed and said I was turning dinner into a lecture. Daphne said I was making Selene miserable with my rules. Roman asked if I was going to cry again. Mila's eyes widened at the word cry, and she stared at the tablecloth like she wanted to disappear. I saw that and felt something harden inside me, not anger, but resolve. Daphne asked Selene if she felt safe at home. The question was not innocent, it was a weapon. Selene paused like she was deciding how far to push. Then she said she felt judged all the time. She said she felt watched. Daphne turned to me and said I was the reason Selene acted out. She said I was suffocating her. I answered that I had never blocked Selene from leaving the house. I had never touched her in anger. I had never threatened her. I said I only asked for honesty and for respect in front of our child. Daphne said honesty was my excuse to interrogate. Selene nodded and said I questioned her like she was a criminal. Roman watched Selene and seemed less amused now. Victor looked at Mila and then looked down at his plate. Selene said the dance meant nothing. She said it was just a way to win an argument. Daphne praised her for being strong. I stared at Daphne and realized she was proud of cruelty as long as Selene looked powerful. I kept my voice low and said Mila asked if she was the reason Mom danced. The table went quieter for a moment. Selene's eyes flashed, and she said Mila was too young to understand adult jokes. Daphne said children should not be used in adult fights. I agreed, and I said that was why Selene should stop turning our marriage into a public show. Daphne snapped that I was accusing Selene again. Selene leaned back and said I was obsessed with being right. I said I was obsessed with Mila not being hurt. Roman stopped smiling completely. Victor finally spoke and said Mila looked tired, and maybe we should keep the talk calm. Daphne ignored him and told me to apologize to Selene right there, in front of everyone, for embarrassing her by showing up at the club district. Selene watched my face carefully. She wanted me to refuse so she could call me stubborn. She wanted me to accept so she could call me weak. Either way, she wanted to win. I did not apologize. I did not insult Daphne either. I said I would not perform guilt or love at a restaurant table. I said our marriage was not a show for extended family. Daphne's mouth tightened. She said my refusal proved I did not care about Selene. Selene smiled like she had been waiting for that line. Roman shifted in his seat, looking uncomfortable. Victor asked Daphne to stop. Daphne told Victor he always avoided truth. Selene looked at her phone again, then put it face down quickly. I heard the buzz against the table and saw Selene's eyes flick to the screen with a small panic she tried to hide. She picked it up and typed under the table. I did not call it out. I did not chase the phone. I watched Mila because Mila's hands were twisting her napkin into a tight rope. On the drive home, Mila fell asleep in the back seat, mouth slightly open, toy still in her hand. Selene stared out the window at first, then looked at her phone again. I could see her typing, deleting, typing again. At a red light, Selene turned to me and said her mother was right. She said I suffocated her. She said if I kept acting like a judge, she would leave for real and make sure everyone knew why. I answered calmly that she could tell any story she wanted, but Mila would live with facts, not stories. Selene asked what that meant. I did not explain. I kept driving. When we parked, Selene got out fast and walked ahead as if she wanted to escape my silence. In the stairwell, she paused and took a call. Her voice dropped low. I could not hear every word, but I heard my name, and I heard her laugh softly like someone was comforting her against me. I carried Mila inside carefully and laid her on the couch for a moment while I took off her shoes. Selene stayed in the stairwell, still on the call. Then the stairwell door clicked. Selene came inside and ended the call quickly, acting casual. Her phone screen lit up for half a second as she slipped it into her pocket. The word private glowed on the screen before it disappeared. Mila stirred on the couch and whispered in her sleep, asking if Mom was mad. My chest tightened again. I looked at Selene and realized the family table had changed nothing. It had only trained her to believe she could win forever with witnesses. I also realized Mila could not live inside a competition. I lifted Mila gently and carried her to bed. When I came back into the hallway, I heard Selene's bedroom drawer close, then click again like it was being locked. I stood still for a moment, listening to the apartment, listening to the thin wall between my child and chaos. By morning, I stopped debating and started ordering my life. I walked Mila to school, then sat by the river with a notebook and a quiet breath. At home, I labeled folders, household, bank, utilities, and slid them into a locked drawer. Selena mocked the labels and said I was playing lawyer. I said I was playing father. She smirked and claimed the club video proved she owned me. I opened my calendar and set Cedar Pier 3 p.m. I looked at her and said I would handle it properly. At the courthouse plaza, Selene arrived smiling like it was another stage. She asked if I wanted an audience again. I stayed silent. A neutral server confirmed our names in a clear voice, then placed papers into her hands. Selene tried to laugh, then stopped when she read the first lines. The immediate terms were simple and real, and they started today. Daphne stepped forward to protest, but Roman refused to lie for her. Selene's phone rang nonstop, yet she could not delete this moment. I turned and walked away.